Hi guys, we're back for the next part of The Wizards of Once by Cressida Cowell, and we left last night with the witch that was dead at the bottom of the sinkhole, and Xar hadn't returned back to his room yet because he was at the spelling competition. But we also know that Squeezes, the small sprite, has been touched by the witch's blood. So I wonder what's going to happen to him. Right, Xar's about to return. Let's see what happens in chapter 11. Xar gets more than he wished for. Xar did not immediately notice anything different about his room when the enchanter's magic broke open the locked door, and the flying chains slung him in there, with Caliburn flapping in just before the door was magically slammed behind them both. Why would Xar think there would be anything different? He'd only left that very same room about 15 minutes earlier. Anyway, he was too busy swearing loud and long and extremely creative curses at the shut door and kicking it with his foot to notice the strangely quiet, tense and quite frankly shell-shocked atmosphere in the wrecked room behind him. "Oh, Xar," said Caliburn, "I think we may have a problem." "I know we have a problem," howled Xar. "My father and my brother don't realise how important I am. Nobody realises." "No, I mean a real problem, Xar." Xar turned round. His jaw dropped open. Wish was standing, stricken, holding on to the enchanted sword. "You took my sword," spat Xar savagely. "It's all your fault, you beastly burglar of a warrior. I was beating Luta and then you interrupted. How did you do it, you treacherous daughter of Queen Sycorax?" Xar made a grab for the sword, and the sprites screeched simultaneously, "Don't touch the sword!" And that was when Xar realised that things had gone even more wrong than he thought. His room was always messy, of course, but now, right in the centre where the bed once was, there was an enormous hole, 7 foot deep, instead. Wish and Bodkin were standing sadly on either side of it. "What have you done to my room?" gasped Xar. "Oh my goodness, I only left you for 15 minutes. What have you done to my room?" Bodkin pointed down the hole. "A witch attacked us. We killed it." "Oh, by ivy and mistletoe and green things with long hairy whiskers," goggled Xar. "Are you quite sure it was a witch? It wasn't just a rogue breath coming to get its blood back?" "Take a look," said Bodkin. Xar peered down into the hole, and there at the bottom was something huge and dark and dead, with long feathered wings for arms and a nose like a beak, and even though it was not moving, a reek of dark magic came off that crumpled feathered thing so strongly that it made Xar reel back. Yup, he'd never seen a witch before, but that was a witch all right. Oh, by the nostril hairs of the grim grisly gruntle ogre, what had his father just said about obtaining magic from a dark source? The reality of a situation is sometimes a little different from the imagining of it, and the recent scene with his father had made him realise that perhaps Encanto wasn't going to be as open-minded about witches and dark magic as Xar had thought he would be. And what was that threat about taking all of Xar's beloved animals and sprites away from him? "Be good," said Xar through white lips. "My father just said, be good. I don't think this really counts as being good, do you?" He gazed down at the hole in a sort of trance. "I mean, a big hole the size of a beastly great dolmen right in the middle of my room with a witch in it." Xar waved his arms around in agitation. "How are we going to get rid of it? We have to get it out of here. My father said one more disobedient thing and he was going to expel me. I think this counts as about 50 disobedient things, don't you?" "You can't touch it," screamed Tiffin-Storm and Ariel. "Don't go near it." "How can we get rid of something we can't even touch?" said Xar. "We'll have to cover it. But with what?" Xar started rather desperately kicking leaves down the hole, but it was like trying to cover a volcano with individual snowflakes. "And that isn't the worst of it," said Wish, swallowing hard. Carefully, Wish laid down the sword and opened a piece of cloth she was holding in the other hand. Inside lay Squeezes, shaking like he had the plague. Okay, just when Tsar thought that things couldn't get worse, they got worse. What on earth happened to Squeeze-Shoes? Gasped Tsar. He got witch blood on him, said Wish sorrowfully. I'm so sorry, Tsar. Is that bad? What does that mean? What's wrong with him? Squeeze-Shoes had turned jade green in colour, and his wings had folded up like they had been crushed in an invisible fist. Every now and then the trembling would cease, and he turned absolutely rigid for a second, as if he'd been frozen, before breaking out into violent shaking once more. I's guarded the princess, said Squeeze-Shoes, but I's fine. I's just fine. But you could see from Squeeze-Shoes' scared eyes that he was terribly frightened about what was happening. Caliburn said sadly, Sprites are much smaller creatures than you are, Tsar. The witch blood will affect them much harder. You have led this sprite into bad, bad trouble. I will take this sprite to my father, said Tsar, through numb white lips. My father can do anything. Caliburn said gently, I think even your father will not be able to heal Squeeze-Shoes, Tsar. It was time for some very hard truths. For very soon this sprite will either die or fall into a coma, said Caliburn, and when he wakes, he will have turned to the dark side. He will become a creature of the dark, and he will seek out witches to be his master. A horrible silence. And this means that the stain on your hand really is witch blood, said Caliburn. I am so sorry, Tsar. I tried to warn you. You wish to be magic, and now you have the wrong kind of magic. Tsar turned over his hand. There, right in the middle of the palm, was the bright green stain. There was no way of covering it, any more than he could cover the great big hole with the witch in it in the middle of the room. He tried to wipe it off on his cloak, but it did not move. I can't even make the witch blood perform magic, said Tsar sadly. If your father finds out that witch blood is on your hand, said Caliburn, he will send you to a correctional facility, and maybe the dark magic will not yet have reached your brain, and you could be saved from turning to the dark side yourself. But your father would then be forced to expel you from the wizards forever. No, cried Tsar, no! What would you have your father do, Tsar? Said Caliburn. The other wizards were calling for you to be expelled just for trying to get dark magic. But you have succeeded, Tsar. You have been in the Bad Woods, and that is forbidden. You have brought iron into the camp, and that is forbidden. You are using dark magic, and that is forbidden. You have drawn a witch to us, and that is forbidden. No, yelled Tsar. Even your father cannot turn back time, Tsar, said Caliburn. Nobody can turn back time. That is impossible. That's the point of magic, isn't it, said Tsar, to do impossible things? There was a long silence. There are some things that are done that cannot be undone, said Caliburn. Ah, do as you would be done by, or you will be well and truly done, is a harsh law indeed. You stupid warriors, raged Tsar. This is all your fault. This is your stupid sword and your stupid witch, and I should never have left Squeeze-Shoes with you when you can't look after him. Wish and Bodkin looked away, for Tsar, the boy who never cried, was crying. Tsar knew in his heart of hearts he couldn't really blame Wish and Bodkin for this. He felt a sludgy, depressed weight of guilt. This was all his fault. Squeeze-Shoes had trusted him. If he couldn't save Squeeze-Shoes, he would never forgive himself. I'm so sorry, Squeeze-Shoes, said Tsar wretchedly. I never meant for this to happen. There must be some way I can make amends and put things back to the way they were. I trust you, master, said Squeeze-Shoes through shaking green lips, looking up at Tsar adoringly. You is my leader, and so you will rescue me, because that is what a leader does. Tsar carefully put Squeeze-Shoes in the front pocket of his waistcoat, and then Tsar put his arm in front of his face. I wish I had never wished to be magic, said Tsar passionately. I wish I could give it all up so that Squeeze-Shoes could be fine again. I wish I had never set that stupid witch trap in the first place. I wish. But wish how he may, Tsar could not turn back time. They had all wanted Tsar to learn a lesson, but this was a far, far worse lesson than anyone had ever dreamed of, and it was dreadful to see him crying and sitting there so small and silent and sad and un-Tsar-like. Even his quiff of hair had drooped. Tsar cried, and Wish patted him on the back sympathetically, and the animals and the sprites pretended they hadn't noticed he was crying. Every now and then, Tsar blurted out fiercely, "I am not crying, and I will kill anyone who says I am." And the sprites pretended to be terrified of him to make him feel better. Down in the hall below them, the sounds of the music stopped abruptly, to be replaced by voices. Tsar removed his arm from in front of his face, suddenly alert. "Listen," whispered Tiffenstorm. "Someone must have noticed the break in the magic covering the fort. They will be telling the King Enchanter." The three children looked at each other, at the green dying sprite, at the sinkhole in the centre of the room with the corpse of a witch in it. "They will know it is something to do with you, Tsar. They will come up here, into this room." This was bad. There was no doubt about it. This was really, really bad. Wish looked at Tsar's face, transformed from its usual cheekiness into total misery and guilt at the plight of his sprite. She forgot Tsar was an enemy and had stolen her sword and kidnapped them. She put out her hand and touched Tsar on the shoulder. "Don't despair, Tsar," said Wish. "It's not too late. It's never too late. I have a plan for how we could save Squeezes." Bodkin felt the first stirrings of unease. "Yes," said Tsar, lifting his drooping head. "Do you remember I told you earlier on, my mother has this stone that takes away magic that she keeps in her dungeon," said Wish. "We could take you back with us to Warrior Fort, and then we can break into my mother's dungeons and get Squeezes to touch the stone, and that will take away the bad magic of the witch and save his life," said Wish. "Could that work?" said Tsar, eagerly turning to Caliburn. "Yes. No, I don't know," said Caliburn. "I suppose in theory that is what the stone does. It takes away magic. But something tells me this is an extremely bad idea." "Well, generally it would be a bad idea to touch a stone that takes away magic," said Tsar with growing excitement. "But in this case, we have a whole lot of magic that we want to get rid of, don't we? Because at the same time, I can touch the stone and get rid of this witch blood on my hand, which my father wouldn't like and doesn't even work." "I also wonder what happened to Crusher," said Wish thoughtfully. "He hasn't got back yet, has he? I'm a bit concerned that my mother's warriors might have captured him." "Do you think so?" said Tsar, suddenly worried, for in his Tsar-like fashion he'd completely forgotten about Crusher. "Do you mean to say I may have put Crusher in danger as well? Wow, even for me, this has been a really bad day." Tsar was looking crestfallen again, so Wish hurriedly pointed out that while they were in Sycorax's dungeons, if Crusher was in there too, they could release him. "That's a brilliant plan, and it solves everything all in one go," said Tsar in relief. "For an enemy, and a weird one at that, you've come up with a great idea. What are we waiting for? Let's go." "Hang on a second," boggled Bodkin. "This isn't brilliant at all, Princess. I'm putting my foot down. You can't take this lunatic back to Warrior Fort with us." "I have to agree with Bodkin," said Caliburn. "And if Queen Sycorax catches Tsar, she'll put him in her dungeons forever, not to mention take away the magic of all of his other sprites." "My mother's not as bad as all that," objected Wish. "She's lovely." "Well, I wouldn't say lovely exactly," said Bodkin gloomily. "Scary, that's what she is, scary. She is one scary mother." "She's a queen and a mother, and it's a mother's job to be scary," said Wish. "Well, she's very successful at her job," shivered Bodkin. "But we've got to go into the dungeons anyway, to return my mother's sword, and we can't let poor Squeezes die, can we?" said Wish. "This is sort of our fault too, and he's flown by our side. Look at him." Tsar sensed Bodkin weakening as he looked at the tragically rigid body of the little hairy fairy tucked into the front of Tsar's waistcoat, shivering in pain and fear. Poor Squeezou, sighed Tsar. He will be so unhappy trapped in a coma. He loved to dance, you know, to fly through the windy trees in autumn, and now his feet will be locked. His voice that sang to nightingales choked in his stony throat. Stop it, said Bodkin, putting his hands over his ears. And even Tsar, said Wish. He's conceited and full of himself and kind of annoying. I am, aren't I? Said Tsar proudly. But we can't let him get expelled from his tribe. Tsar made a few mistakes, but doesn't he deserve a second chance? We all deserve a second chance, pleaded Wish. Bodkin sighed. All right, he said. It's a mad idea, but all right. We'll help them. But you have to promise me, Wish. After all this is over, you really will start being a normal, ordinary warrior princess. I promise, said Wish. The three of them shook hands on the plan. Who'd have thought it, marvelled Tsar. Wizards and warriors working together. The sound of voices and running feet was getting nearer and nearer. Okay, said Tsar briskly, picking up the spelling book and putting it in his pocket. Wolves, bear, you stay here. Caliburn, snowcats, sprites, you're coming with us. But we're going to need to be quick here, so we're going to have to go by door. Tiffinstorm, do the spell. Why is it always me who has to do everything? Grumbled Tiffinstorm, getting out a number 6 from her wand bag and lobbing one of her spells at the door of Tsar's room. What do you mean, go by door? Asked Bodkin uneasily. As if in answer to his question, with a mighty creak, the door of Tsar's room shrugged in its frame and tore itself out of its hinges and waddled into the centre of the room before tipping slam flat on its face onto the floor and then gently rising about a foot in the air in a cloud of dust. Tsar picked up the sword and climbed on the door, shouting, Come on, you guys, quick, quick! Oh no, said Bodkin, shaking his head hysterically. The snowcats were bad enough, but are you really expecting me to ride on a door like a flying carpet in a story? It's perfectly safe, said Tsar, helping Wish up beside him. Kind of. And the snowcats can run a lot faster when we're not on their backs. Hurry! Come on, Bodkin, said Wish excitedly. The snowcats had already jumped out of Tsar's window and climbed down the ladders and platforms so it was too late to travel by snowcat. Even the enchanted spoon had hopped on enthusiastically next to Tsar and Wish and seemed to be looking at Bodkin expectantly, as if he had faith that Bodkin could be the kind of person who would see flying on the back of a door as an exciting opportunity rather than an act of suicide. Oh dear, I have to do this. I can't be less of a hero than a spoon, but what am I doing? Thought Bodkin as he clambered onto the back of the door beside Wish and Tsar. It wasn't even an entirely complete door, for the door of Tsar's room had led a difficult life, so there were great cracks and splits all across it. Held together by magic, held together by magic, Bodkin repeated to himself reassuringly as Tsar jerked the key in the keyhole frantically to the right, and Bodkin grabbed onto the top of the door only just in time as, with a sickening lurch, it flew off, up through the non-existent ceiling and into the night. For the first 5 minutes, Bodkin was so terrified he didn't even open his eyes. He just concentrated on not falling off and not fainting and not throwing up because of the wild sweeping motion of the flying door. And when he did eventually open his eyes, he regretted it. They were slaloming madly through the trees of the forest and through the crazy paving of the cracks in the door. Below him he could see the running snowcats and the bright little blinks of the flying sprites. Bodkin let out a moan of fear. Wish's eyes were like stars. She was enjoying it so much. She and Tsar were whooping with every swoop. It had to be said, Tsar was an excellent, if reckless, flying door driver. The door swayed and soared like a peregrine falcon, with Tsar swivelling the key in the keyhole with exactly the right smoothness and dexterity to wing its way neatly through the forest. We're going to crash, moaned Bodkin. "We're not going to crash," said Wish exultantly, as they swooped through the upper canopy. "We're flying like birds, and we're going to get back before morning, and we're going to cure Squeezeus and free Crusher and get rid of Zar's bad magic. We're going to crash if your scary mother catches us breaking into her scary dungeons, we'll be in such trouble it doesn't bear thinking about," chattered Bodkin through white lips. "Don't think about it then," advised Wish. "Maybe she won't catch us, Bodkin, and we haven't crashed yet, have we? Just relax and enjoy it. It's not every day you get to fly somewhere by door. Just go with it." And as they soared gloriously and recklessly through the trees on the back of the broken flying door, the night wind blowing their hair back, Bodkin found to his astonishment that if he let himself relax and go with the motion of the door, he could whoop with joy along with the others. Bodkin's father would have been amazed and not very pleased if he could have seen him now. This is the problem with adventures. They bring out parts of you that you've never even knew were there. Wow, flying on a door through the Bad Woods. How exciting. So, the three of them are going back to the Warrior Fort, and this is actually the end of part 1, which was called Disobedience. Tomorrow we're going to start part 2, which is called Making Amends. So I'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye.